not all superheroes wear capes. Some just wear indestructible exoskeletons. There aren't too many immortal, invincible creatures on this good green earth, but one of them is an adorable little microorganism. And he lives in your backyard. Don't miss this animal that brings a new definition to life, death, and taxonomy.
Welcome back to Life, Death, and Taxonomy, your 30 minutes of interesting animal info. Today, we're talking about something that defies classification.
Does it?
But I don't defy classification because I'm Joe.
And I'm Carlos. And forgive me, I'm a little stopped up. That's why my voice will be weird.
I consider it to defy classification when it requires its own phylum.
Oh, because we can classify it right now.
We can classify it.
This is Life, Death, and Taxonomy, so that we have to classify it.
But I imagine when they first saw it, they were like, what is this? And they're like, and it looked back at them, and it says, I defy you.
And they're like, all right.
Like, fine, you're a tardigrade.
And he said that's insulting because it means slow stepper in Latin.
All right, let's break this down. Kingdom, Animalia, as that is a given so far. Phylum, Tardigrades or Tardigrades.
I like that. Sounds more Latin.
Class, there's a few different ones, but Heterotardigradia or Tardigrada or Mesotardigrada, but for the interest of going all the way down to family, I'm going to talk about the Eutardigrada. Is that?
Eutardigrada.
Eutardigrada. Order, Apocella. Acapella? Apochela.
Okay.
Maybe it's Apochela.
No, it's probably a hard CH.
And then family, Milnesilidae.
Milnesilidae?
No, L. Messi. It's two I's in a row. What am I supposed to do with that?
Just make that E, right?
Milnesidae. Milnesidae.
Okay.
All right.
What's the species?
It has several.
Well, this episode is mostly going to be about the entire phylum, which is crazy that we would do an episode on an entire phylum. But these guys mostly look pretty similar.
Yeah.
But some species have different characteristics. What makes them different species.
Right.
But
there's a lot of facial differences.
Really?
For the most part, I saw they have kind of a what do they call it? Like a tubular.
Yeah,
it's tubular, bro.
They look like a robot.
Their face, yeah.
It's
and it can retract and shoot out.
So if you haven't heard of a tardigrade before, aka space bear or water bear. Go look up a picture under an electron microscope because these guys are pretty trippy, and you'll get a better idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah, they're pretty small. They are they can range from 0.3 millimeters to a whole whopping 1.5 millimeters.
That is too big to handle. That's almost big enough to see without a microscope.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not microscopic.
It is microscopic. Right?
1.5 millimeters is not microscopic.
Oh, but the first one is.
Yeah, yes. I imagine
in order to know that it was there with the naked eye, you could see something that was 1.5 millimeters. So you would be able to say there's a weird moving speck on my paper or whatever. But the smaller one,
what it is, I guess. It depends on what microscopic. If you cannot see it at all with the naked eye, then it's not microscopic. If that's what microscopic is, most of them, or the mean is probably not microscopic.
The mean of them you could see?
Yeah.
You don't need a very powerful microscope to see these guys in detail.
That's right.
And an electron microscope allows you to see...
Microscope.
It's a
microscope.
That'd be my actor pseudonym, Michael Scope.
So let's talk about their description. Their original name was Kleiner Wasserbeer.
Wasserbeer?
Yeah. Little water bear is what that means.
What was the first word?
Kleiner.
Kleiner means little?
Sure.
In German?
Yeah. Little water bear because of the way it walks. It seems to lumber like a bear.
It definitely, I get that. I see it.
Later it's called tardigrade, which means slow walker, as you said. And that's because when you look under a microscope, you usually see a lot of little doodads and tiddlywinks running around at the speed of sound.
Mm-hmm. Those tiddlywinks, man.
So
I can't look into a microscope without seeing a tiddlywink moving
everywhere.
at the speed of sound.
You just hear like tiny little pops. That's them breaking the sound barrier.
Okay. It gets out of hand.
They're not real. They're a made-up animal that we did.
Tiddlywink? Or just bacteria and stuff that moves really quickly in bursts.
Yeah. But these boys seem to lumber. They are more methodical in their movement.
They're also not bacteria. They're multicellular.
Yep. They are full-on animals.
Which is why they have their own phylum, because they defy classification on everything else, but they're not quite. They're not unicellular.
Now, are they the smallest animal? What about zooplankton?
I think those are single cellular though.
Zooplankton?
Or phytoplankton.
Phytoplankton is plants.
Yeah, but that's like one cell, I think.
But zooplankton is an animal plankton.
Yeah, that fish eat. Yeah. So, like, I mean, if it was as small as a tardigrade, no fish is going to care about that.
Maybe it is big.
Zooplankton? I bet you that's big enough to see without a microscope.
Most of them live in moss or moist leaves, but they can live in sand dunes on the beach. Mm-hmm. Sand dunes. Yep. Sand dunes.
They can also probably live in sand dudes.
Whatever that is.
A dude made out of sand.
I guess. If you made kind of like a snowman, but instead they're called sand dudes.
I bet you there'd be tardigrades in there.
Probably. They can live in dirt, but most of the time they like moist, leafy areas.
They can also live in water?
Like if you don't clean your gutter, that's a nice spot.
They've been found in Antarctica and at the top of the Himalayas.
I don't think they can they live underwater? I thought they can be drowned.
They're water bears.
I thought they can be drowned.
I think they don't.
Not easily, mind you.
I think they can get oxygen molecules out from water through osmosis.
Okay.
Because they can live in water.
They don't need to, though. They need water, though.
Right. They need at least one molecule to hang on to.
They can just hold it because they're small.
I seriously imagine them just like holding this little, but it's like a ball and sticks, like you have when you make molecules.
It's just
hanging on to it and just playing with it like it's his
ball.
Precious.
So this the fact that they like moss gives them the name moss piglet, which is my favorite of their names. Here's what they look like. They're like little round oblong, like baby bodies.
It's like a caterpillar.
Yeah, sort of.
It's like a tiny caterpillar.
Like a chubby.
I said caterpillar.
A chubby short caterpillar. Caterpillar.
I used to say caterpillar when I was a kid.
Caterpillar.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even like wrap my brain around switching between those two quickly. They have 4 sets of legs, and the back legs are inverted. So
why?
To grab onto stuff.
Oh, okay.
Why?
The rest of it is just locomotion.
Yeah. Like, what are they climbing over? Like leaves and stuff?
I imagine they're climbing
other molecules.
Yeah, other very small things.
Well, also, they got little claws on the ends of their short, stubby legs.
They're bears, of course.
Uh-huh. They're not actually bears.
Class Ursus or whatever.
Ugh.
No,
that'd be the most adorable.
You just look in and there's just a tiny, complete bear that's that big. Just like a sun bear.
Now, do they have eyeballs? Did you know?
I don't think so.
Or like eye spots?
I think they have, they just walk until they run into things.
But so they have tubular mouths,
mm-hmm.
and they can like shoot out and retract like a toy lightsaber.
Okay.
Know? So I've seen animations where they shoot it out and eat a little particle and suck it back in. How do they know the particle's there?
So maybe they like run into it, they back up, and then they shoot it out.
I don't know.
Or maybe they can sense like pressure changes in the water medium that they're hanging out in. Or it doesn't look like they have eyes, and I didn't read anything that they could see. Having eyes is a really complicated thing that I don't think that this tiny thing would be able to handle. They have a digestive system, but they don't have blood or a heart. Plus, they would need eyes that look like bug eyes that covered most of their head, because they're so small that the wavelengths of light most wavelengths wouldn't even reach them. They might be able to, if they had eyes, they could see vague shadows maybe, but
they would need really complex eyes like a bug in order to see being that small.
I didn't read if they had a central nervous system.
They do have a nervous system. Yeah, they have a brain.
Little tiny brain.
That's bilateral, just like ours.
So it's not impossible for them to have eyeballs or eye spots.
Unless they don't.
Eye spots. It's probably more going to be an eye spot because it's a simple version.
Just like a hole for light to go into.
Yeah, Mm-hmm. So they're like, oh, it's dark here, it's light here, it's dangerous.
I imagine that they react to light. You could shine a light and they'll be like, I'm going there, or I'm going away from it.
Let the whole world see. Tubular mouths, squirt them out. This is how they reproduce. Some of them reproduce with parthenogenesis, which is laying an egg and letting it hatch. There's no fertilization. So it's asexual reproduction.
See, when I think of asexual reproduction, I think of
budding.
I think of budding like a sponge does.
No, you can bud. You can do this. This is another way.
Jellyfish also reproduce asexually. A lot of them do.
And then starfish, don't they? Like, that's not budding. It's something else, but it's similar. Where if an arm gets cut off.
I mean, lizards do that too with their tails.
No, no, they don't.
You can cut off a lizard's tail and it'll grow back.
Oh, no. I'm talking about you cut off a piece of something and then two grow.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. I thought you meant it would grow
like there's
back.
a lizard that can like grow a whole body.
No. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So you cut off a starfish's arm, and then that arm becomes a starfish, and then the starfish grows another arm. Yes. So you have two complete starfish after that.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess each arm is complex enough to do that, and it's just a symmetric thing where each thing is individual rather than one whole.
And then octopuses can eat their own arms. Isn't that nuts? It's like,
I didn't know that.
Whatever, they'll cut it off and eat it, even like during times of starvation.
Huh?
That would be convenient.
I mean, it would
for
hurt.
survival. Yeah. Well, if we did it, it would hurt and it would be gross.
If you could, it would be convenient to be able to grow that stuff back because you can eat your arm.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you from that.
I guess. Yeah. Why don't people do that?
Because then they're going to run out of arms.
People dying of starvation. Eat your arms.
Oh my gosh.
I'm thinking about like if you're like plane crash in the Alps, nobody ever eats their arms.
They eat other people's arms.
Yeah, I guess that is preferable.
Yeah, that's anyway.
Oh, macabre. Anyway, so that's that. Nothing else really interesting about them.
Yeah, so that pretty much wraps up this episode. Except. Here is the most interesting part about these animals. They are the most resilient animals on the planet. When I say resilient, I mean that...
Emotionally?
Yeah. You could develop a really close relationship and then betray them or just break it off suddenly with a text. And and they'll just go on living their lives.
Imagining them with tiny smartphones.
They're very in the now. So they don't care about the past. They don't care about the future.
You know what those would be called? Single cell phones.
That was pretty funny, actually. I just didn't want to laugh directly into the microphone, but I like single cell phones. Especially because now you're single and so is the tardigrade.
Oh, yeah, because we broke it off via single cell phone.
So this works on 3 different levels. But, yeah, these guys are very resilient physically. I don't know about their emotional state. I haven't talked to one. But apparently there's a long history of actively trying to kill tardigrades.
And not doing well.
And failing at it. Although, like, a lot of the times you put a group of tardigrades into a situation and then some of them survive, which leads to, hey, these guys can survive this. But
True.
Most of them usually die. But still.
But it's not like, oh, we took a candle and we waved it over them a little bit. It's way more intense than that.
Right. So here are some of the situations that they can survive. They've been brought down to 1 Kelvin, which is 1 Kelvin degree, not a degree, it's just 1 Kelvin above absolute zero, meaning 0 molecular movement. I mean, there's a lot of molecular movement going on in our bodies, in the wall, in the sky. A lot of molecular movement going on.
How do they do that?
I have no idea how you bring something to absolute zero. And you can't bring something to absolute zero. We have no example of that on Earth.
Okay.
Meaning that, I mean, just air. Air, the movement of air makes it not absolute zero automatically because that means molecules are moving. So these guys can be brought to 1 Kelvin, which means almost nothing is moving.
So we don't know if they can be brought to absolute zero and survive.
Right. But they can be brought to 1 and survive for about, I think, 10 minutes. So absolute zero, or 1 Kelvin, is equal to negative 458 degrees Fahrenheit.
Fun.
And for all you people who use the metric system, for good reason, it's negative 272 degrees Celsius. And so that's the low end, low temperatures. On the high end, they can survive up to 420 Kelvin, which it's pretty hot. It's 300 degrees Fahrenheit.
Absolute hero. Because that's the opposite of zero, according to Hercules.
Yeah, so from absolute zero to almost absolute zero to almost absolute hero, they make it to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which is far past the boiling point of water, but not quite hot enough to cook a potato. Because it's 375 degrees. You gotta preheat the oven to that much. So they'd probably die in your oven if you were cooking a potato next to it. But they probably survive in a microwave for a while.
Yeah, because they can take irradiation too.
Right, and also, I just realized we radiate our food.
Yeah,
we send microwaves.
Yeah,
electromagnetic spectrum microwaves through our food to polarize the water molecules and get things moving. That isn't. How are we not all dead?
We're dying.
It's true. It's all because of microwaves that we're dying.
Well, they kill us, but they just kill us after like 95 years.
Okay. And so, anyway, 300 degrees Fahrenheit is equivalent to 150 degrees Celsius. And so that's the temperature spectrum. On the pressure spectrum, they can survive super, super high pressures. I've read up to 6,000 atmospheric pressures for some species.
So if you sit on a pile of leaves, don't worry about it.
Yeah, they're fine. Because down at the Mariana Trench, the deepest place in the world, or the place that's closest to
emotionally,
closest to the core of the Earth emotionally, closest to the mantle, that's about 1,200 atmospheric pressures of water. Crushing these things,
and they're great under pressure.
Yeah, they can react really quickly, even though they're called slow steppers. And an interesting thing about things that live under pressure is that you can, if you try to take them out of this high pressure scenario, they explode because they're super dense and they just expand until their skin can't hold it anymore and they explode.
That's incredible. So if you took them. If you move them up a little bit.
Maybe if you did it over the course of years. Or maybe
you have a giant one?
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm talking about the things that live down there.
Oh, other things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because tardigrades can survive under that, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that they're not extremophiles. Meaning, an extremophile loves these extreme circumstances, hence extremophile. And so they thrive under these scenarios, like tube worms, those crabs that live at the bottom of the ocean, and all those crazy things. In fact, they only survive in these extreme circumstances. Where tardigrades, their chances of survival go down significantly when they're put in these situations.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, not considered extremophilic.
Right. So you can put a tardigrade under 6,000 atmospheric pressures.
That's in a way more incredible. Because those guys need that, right? Mm-hmm. Those people that live like down by the like those dudes, the ones that there's crabs and tube worms that live in like thermal vents, or around thermal vents, and then when the thermal vent goes away, they die. So they need incredible, intense situations to survive. Whereas these boys, they don't need that, but they can take it. Almost.
Some of them can take it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I said this earlier, but when I say that these guys can survive these situations, it means that some of them survive.
Some of them can, yeah, you said it.
So, yeah, extremely high pressure scenarios. They can also survive extremely low pressure scenarios. What would be a good example of a low pressure scenario, Joe?
Like sitting around on the couch, you don't have anything to do that day.
Like you can't even choose Netflix options.
No.
It's just low pressure.
Somebody is like, let's watch Arthur, and you're like, I guess. And you watch Arthur.
I guess no pressure, bro. It's either that or the vacuum of space.
Yeah, oh, that's true.
That's another low pressure scenario, I would say. High pressure, like stress wise, but low pressure when it comes to physics.
Unless you're a tardigrade.
Still low pressure scenario. So there was a project where it was a bio project when it comes to things surviving in space, bacteria, viruses, things like that. Tardigrades were involved in that, and exposed to the vacuum of space and solar radiation for 10 straight days. And 68% of them died, which is a lot less than you'd expect.
Yeah.
Because if you did that to, like, a wren or something, like
100% death.
100% would die. Just upon being released in the atmosphere.
A basket of golden retrievers?
Oh my
100%.
gosh, I wasn't going to go there. That's the saddest thing ever.
Let's think of something worse.
Humans? Exposed to the vacuum of space?
100%.
They can survive out there even without tiny little spacesuits.
What?
Which
I was assuming these scientists were just looking for tiny animals that could fit inside tiny spacesuits.
Uh-huh.
But no, it's just like...
No, they're just like...
Full Arnold from
Magic School Bus. Tardigrades can survive extremely high pressures, extremely low pressures. They can also survive radiation, which I said earlier, they're exposed to solar radiation. Now, down here, we're protected from a lot of solar radiation, a lot of UV, gamma, ultraviolet rays. I said UV and ultraviolet.
Because of my sunglasses in the atmosphere.
Mostly because of the atmosphere. But then out there in space, it's just pure sun is hitting you. And these guys can take it for 10 days, which is an alarming amount of radiation. They can survive 6,200 grays of gamma radiation, which may not mean anything to you until I say that we can survive 5.
Gamma rays?
Grays of gamma radiation.
They're called grays?
Mm-hmm.
That's neat.
It's 1 joule.
How many till I turn into the Hulk?
0, because you'd be dead way before then. It's a gray is 1 joule, which is how you measure energy of radiation energy.
Mm-hmm. And success during Valentine's Day.
A joule. I got 1 joule. Success.
That's what women like. They like jewels.
Right. Of energy.
Yeah.
It means you put energy into your relationship.
Exactly. Yes. Effort.
So the question is, how do these little guys survive all this?
Do we not know?
We do know a little bit.
A little bit?
Because we know why these things would kill us and other animals.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we lack that they have is something called D-sup. D-sup, bro. It's short
That sounds like one of those things where I say, I don't know. And you say, I don't know, D-sup with you. Or something like that. Like up dog. Sounds like
yeah.
You're tricking me.
Don't worry. I'm not tricking you. It's short for damage suppressor. Which sounds like something that you put into your exosuit when you're playing a video game.
Uh-huh.
But no, it's a protein that attaches to their DNA. And it allows them to rebuild their DNA really quickly. And it also lines their cells.
Just like Wolverine.
Yeah, they do repair really fast. So one of the problems with radiation is that it breaks apart your DNA, which there's no coming back from. And one of the problems with being really, really, really hot is the fact that eventually your DNA begins to break up and the molecules in your DNA start to vibrate enough to break apart. But for the tardigrade, it says, "Oh, hold on, let's keep these pieces.
Keep it together, man.
Stick them back together like Lincoln
Hold,
logs."
brothers.
So that's how they survive, like the radiation and the high temperatures. But they also go into something called cryptobiosis, which is something that we can only ever hope to do. So they will ball up into this ball, much like a millipede will do if you tap it, and it'll hold all of the water that it has into this one tiny area in the middle.
These little water molecules with the sticks and the balls.
Mm-hmm. And just kind of play with it until they're rehydrated. So this will allow them to survive situations where there's no water. This is called anhydrosis. So cryptobiosis is in multiple forms. Anhydrosis means there's no water. And so they ball up and they take what water they have and they kind of just hang on to it. Mm-hmm. And they can survive for a long time that way. Also, there's cryobiosis, which you can probably guess what that means.
Too much water.
No, low temperatures. Like cryo sleep.
Well, that's not the opposite of no water.
Right.
So you tricked me.
I
knew it was a trick.
I'm trying to help you here.
Cryo sleep. I get it.
Right. Yeah. So when it's really, 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 really cold, like at the top of the Himalayas or in Antarctica or in space, they ball up and they can survive, but they're not really sure exactly how this is done, how they maintain a semblance of heat, and how they bring it back after they've lost all their heat. Almost all of it. All but 1 Kelvin.
Yuck, man. That sounds uncomfortable.
It does sound uncomfortable. And there's anoxybiosis, which anoxybiosis is no oxygen situation. So they can live without oxygen. So all these 3 things put together lets them survive in the vacuum of space. No water, no oxygen, and very, very low temperatures. And when they're in this balled up state, they're called a ton. T-U-N, or tune. I don't know I'd say ton, because tune has an E at the end. And bun is...
Yeah.
Yeah, so ton.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, this is basically how they survive. And in a lot of situations, they can survive up to 30 years this way. So these are, like...
But they're in stasis. They're not doing anything.
Right.
Which is why they're not extremophiles.
Right.
Because in these extreme situations, they're not, like, having a great time.
They're basically dead.
They're like in a stasis.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get how they, like, go without nourishment. They have, like, that...
They slow their metabolism to 0.01%.
I guess.
During this time.
I guess a tiny little thing like that doesn't need a lot of cheeseburgers either.
Nope. It probably like, all right, I'm about to go into this huge thing. Let me eat this one giant particle that I found. And, I mean, I'm good for the next 40 years or whatever.
I mean, I could eat, but...
I wonder if they're bears, so they look like little fat things. So I wonder if they lose a lot of weight when they're...
I don't know. I think all of their cells touch the outside. Oxygen is exposed to all of their cells, which is why they don't need blood.
Oh, yeah. I remember hearing about that. Because blood's primary purpose is to move oxygen
cells.
Yeah, to your muscles and things like that.
Yeah.
But if they absorb oxygen and all of their cells already have it, then they don't need to circulate it. Something that big doesn't need a circulatory system. I don't think anything that big has a circulatory system.
Or that small is another way to say that.
Either way, right?
Yeah, I was like big for a second.
I could say like you're this big and and hold my fingers really close together.
But that's wrong. I'm much bigger than that.
Never mind.
Anyway, that brings up like a lot of interesting thoughts.
Well, the fact that they
being how do they get something to 1 Kelvin? How do they expose these to space without them like flying out of the test tubes? You know, like how do they do it? Like, did they put them in like a little petri dish and like float them out there? How did the tardigrades not float away?
I have no idea. I imagine it was some sort of like capsule that was not
airtight.
That was not airtight.
But they're so small.
They would just slip out of any hole.
I don't know. Like that's.
I imagine you could probably make something that let in and out air, but wouldn't do that for a tardigrade because they're not. I mean, they're small, but they're not super small.
True.
They're not molecular or cellular. They are cellular. They're not. They're multicellular. But so the question is, did they come from space?
Oh, that's right.
Because they're the only animal that can survive in space. Mm-hmm. There's the common theory that they
hitched a ride on an asteroid and came to Earth like some sort of venom symbiote,
or like some sort of Kryptonian.
Mm-hmm. They're baby Supermen. That's what it is.
I mean, yeah, they really are like superheroes. The idea behind that. They can survive high temperatures, but they can't survive being on fire. Because you can make something really hot and not have fire at all. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that they would burn up in the atmosphere no matter what. Unless they were encased in the ice of a comet that made it all the way to Earth.
That's interesting to think about. Because you always think about fire kills you because it's too hot. But really it's because the fire is consuming you for fuel if you're on fire.
Right. So, I mean, you would die if it was that hot, but something could survive. Like, orange fire is not that hot when you compare it to, 420 degrees Kelvin.
Uh-huh.
Actually, no. It's not that hot when you compare it to, like, the surface of the sun. 420 degrees Kelvin is actually not that hot compared to a lot of things, like magma and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But fire is the chemical process of turning matter into energy, turning matter as fuel and turning it into thermal energy, which these tardigrades cannot survive. But they can survive just the atmosphere being that hot. You really have to separate fire from heat. Fire produces heat, but it is not heat by itself. So I don't really subscribe to the idea that they came from space.
Some people think that they could survive a trip to another planet, like on a comet or something like that.
Well, they were exposed to the pure radiation of the sun and the vacuum of space for 10 days, and 68% of the sample died. So if they were going to make the trip from Mars to here in probably 10 years, maybe. I feel like they would all be dead by then.
Yeah.
I think maybe if you expose them to the vacuum of space for 20 days, they would all die.
Plus, the idea that a rock picks up tardigrades and hits another planet, ridiculous.
We were
by accident.
We were talking about this earlier, that the chances of something coming from Earth randomly and hitting another planet in our solar system are literally astronomical. Because, I mean, these planets are moving very fast, and they're also really small when you compare it to space.
Yeah, there's a lot of space. Like, when you put it together, like, tennis ball and, like, the golf ball to make your, like, solar system in school, you need a gymnasium for the scale.
Yeah, and these things are really far apart, and I almost said that most of space is nothing, but apparently most of space is dark matter. But we don't know what that is yet. So,
but we know we can say that most of it is that.
Right.
Which is annoying to me.
So that's what we got on tardigrades. And they're everywhere. There's so many of them. You can go to pretty much any park, find some moss, or find moss that's not in a park. Do whatever you want. And
clean out the gutter.
And you'll most likely find tardigrades. They're all over the planet. I mean, they might be in your house right now. They probably are in your house right now. But they're so small, you won't see them. And they're also practically indestructible. Although I imagine you could squish one. Just like cockroaches can survive a lot of things, you can still just step on it and kill it. Just impact, really. So these guys are pretty cool. They're definitely one of the coolest animals out there. So that's all we got on tardigrades. Thanks for listening. If you want to get in contact with us, you can visit us on Facebook. We now have a Facebook page.
Congrats to us.
/LD Taxonomy. You can also, of course, subscribe to us on iTunes. That's the best way to listen to us, because you can take our episodes on the go and learn from wherever. Your car, your job, a park. If you're at the park, go get some tardigrades, by the
way. Is there anything we should remember?
Oh, yes. Tagline. There's nothing that is certain except life, death, and taxonomy.
Oh. Hello. You're still here? Well, this week's episode is over. Carlos already left. I'm just sitting here listening to the sounds of Pongo pygmaeus rubbing its legs together. Anyway, this week's episode is over, but if you're looking for more podcasts, why don't you head over to your local podcasting app, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, whatever you got, and subscribe. Just type in Life, Death, and Taxonomy into the search bar for more interesting animal info. Besides, Pongo pygmaeus is a kind of orangutan. I was just kidding earlier. If you thought it was a cricket, you definitely need to be listening to more LDT. Wait, did you hear that? Oh, okay, so that is an orangutan. I'm out of here. See you in the next video.